Okay, so let's dive into this huge, high-stakes battle brewing in California. It's a fight over billionaire wealth, and honestly, it could completely reshape how America taxes its wealthiest citizens. And this, right here, isn't just some random question for a college exam. It's the central problem California is trying to solve right now. The state is home to an incredible amount of wealth, and they're trying to figure out how, or maybe even if, they can tap into it.
$2 trillion. Just let that sink in for a second. That is the staggering collective wealth of California's billionaires. And get this, that number has absolutely exploded. It shot up from just $300 billion back in 2011. This incredible growth is really at the heart of the whole debate.
So to really get what's happening now, we've got to go back and look at round one, the first big proposal. You can think of it as the opening shot in this wealth tax war. And the way it failed? Well, that set the stage for everything that came next. So this first plan was called Assembly Bill 259, and it was pretty comprehensive. The idea was a recurring annual tax up to 1.5% on a person's entire worldwide net worth. But the part that got everyone talking was this super controversial exit tax, which was designed to keep taxing billionaires for years, even after they packed up and left California. Now, what's really fascinating is just how fast this bill went down. It ran into a brick wall of opposition from the business community, but the real nail in the coffin came straight from the governor's office. They put out a statement saying, flat out, wealth tax proposals are going nowhere in California. And just like that, it was dead in committee. But the fight was far from over. Proponents learned a big lesson from that defeat. They regrouped and came back for round two with a much, much smarter strategy. If you can't get it through the politicians, take it directly to the people. So instead of a complicated, ongoing law, they're now pushing a ballot initiative, the 2026 Billionaire Tax Act. And you got to notice the framing here. It's brilliant. It's not a permanent tax. No, it's a one-time 5% emergency measure. And the money is specifically set aside for things everyone cares about, like Medi-Cal and K-12 education. It's a much more focused and, frankly, persuasive pitch to voters. And here is the really clever part of this new design. It uses something called a backward-looking liability. What does that mean? Well, the tax would apply to your net worth on a specific date in the past, back when you were a resident. This is a strategic masterstroke because it's meant to completely neutralize the biggest argument against the first plan. You can't dodge a tax by moving away tomorrow if it's already attached to you from yesterday. When you put them side by side like this, the strategic shift just pops. You can see the move from that recurring tax with the legally shaky exit tax to a much cleaner one-time levy that's designed to be way harder to escape. It's a calculated attempt to sidestep that whole capital flight argument and force the debate onto totally different ground. And this brings us right to the heart of it all, the great economic debate. This is where two completely different visions for California's future just clash head-on. It's fairness and funding versus the fear of flight. So on one side, you have the argument for the tax. Proponents say this is fundamentally about fairness. They point to the buy, borrow, die strategy, where the ultra-wealthy use their assets as collateral to get loans for their lifestyle, and then they pass those assets to their heirs totally tax-free. They argue a wealth tax is the only way to capture that value for essential state services we all rely on. But on the other side, opponents are warning about a massive economic backlash. Their number one fear is capital flight, that billionaires will just pack up their bags and move to states like Nevada or Florida. And since the top 1% of earners in California already pay nearly half the state's income tax, losing even a handful of them could blow a huge hole in the state budget. Okay, so even if they sort out the economics, there's this other giant hurdle, and it might be the biggest one of all, the law. Even if voters say yes to a wealth tax, it would immediately get hit with a ton of lawsuits, arguing it violates both the U.S. and the California constitutions. You see, in California, it's not a simple yes or no vote. It's way more complicated. Because of how the state's constitution is written, passing a wealth tax is a mandatory two-step process. First, voters have to approve a constitutional amendment just to allow it to exist, and only then could the tax itself actually be passed. And this chart right here, it shows you the problem in a nutshell. A wealth tax is legally seen as a tax on personal property. And right now, the state constitution caps any tax like that at a rate of 0.4%. As you can see, both the 1.5% and the 5% proposals are way, way higher. That's exactly why that constitutional amendment has to happen first.
And on top of all the state issues, this thing would face huge challenges in federal court. Lawyers would argue the Commerce Clause is violated because it illegally penalizes moving between states. And the Due Process Clause brings up the thorny question of whether California even has the legal right, the nexus, to tax people and their money after they've already left. These are massive, untested legal questions.
So, what's the next move in this high-stakes chess match? Well, after the first plan failed with the lawmakers, the battle is now moving to the ballot box.
Right now, it all comes down to good old-fashioned shoe leather and clipboards. The folks behind the 2026 Billionaire Tax Act are out there gathering signatures. They need to collect almost 875,000 valid signatures from California voters just to get this question onto the ballot in 2026. And that leaves us with the ultimate question, the one that California voters might have to answer themselves. Is this thing a groundbreaking tool for fairness, a necessary fix for systemic inequality? Or is it a dangerous economic and legal gamble that's going to drive wealth out of the state and get shot down by the courts anyway? The answer is going to have consequences far beyond California's borders.